devotees, Dandavat Pranam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Today we are so fortunate to have His Grace Gokul Das Prabhuji from Mayapur. And today Prabhuji will enlighten us on Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 7, Chapter 4, Verse 24 onwards. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please take over the call whenever you are ready, and sorry for delay, Prabhuji.
I had to go, so please all accept my obeisance as well. So because this is, I didn't grow up with this kind of tech. I have my assistant Shiva Jiva, the Jiva named Shiva with me, and he's helping me with all this. And I'm not sure when my picture is going to come on or when I'm going to see everybody else. That's under your control, I guess. But if you like, I can go ahead and start with the verse, just any old time. Let me know when. What happened?
You can start, Prabhuji.
Okay. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Kumani Puchane Nirvishishis Kashtata Deshataya. Okay, so I'm just going to read it with no back and forth reciprocation on the translation, transliteration, etc. I'm just going to read through it. It's easier for me to work it that way. Okay, the verse is Srimad Bhagavatam 7.4.21. Tasyogra danda samvignaha sarvalokaha sapalakaha anyatra labda sharana saranam ayurchutanam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Everyone, including the rulers of the various planets, were extremely distressed because of the severe punishment inflicted upon them by Hiranyakashipu. Fearful and disturbed, unable to find any other shelter, at last they surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 5:20, excuse me, I gotta have some water here. Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 5:25, I've got a cold, so I may be sounding a little bit like I'm underwater or something. Bhoktaram yagya tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gattamam santam richati. Sages who know me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. Close quote. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is actually the best friend of everyone. I'm going to comment here. This is one reason that Krishna, he has to be equal to everyone. He can't show favorites, and that's why he can't say, well, I'm going to make this one a devotee and I'm going to leave this one in the dust. He can't pick and choose because it means that he's not equal to everyone. So that's why it's always Vanchakalpa Tarubhishtam. He relies on his devotees to pick and choose who's ready to go and become a devotee or not. I haven't heard this mentioned before, actually, but it seems to me to make sense by means of Anumana Pramana, that third form of the fourth Vedic evidence. Fourth Vedic evidence is Anumana Pramana, as Prabhupada refers to it. He had to use logic and reason to convince people to even accept Shastra in the first place. And this has to be the reason, if you ask me, why we have to rely on pure devotees to bring us back to Krishna. Krishna has to be equal to everyone. Now, moving on with Srila Prabhupada's purport. In a condition of distress or misery, one wants to seek shelter of a well-wishing friend. The well-wishing friend of the perfect order is Lord Sri Krishna. Therefore, all inhabitants of the various planets, being unable to find any other shelter, were obliged to seek the shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Friend, the Supreme Friend. If from the very beginning we seek shelter of the Supreme Friend, there will be no cause for danger. It is said that if a dog is swimming in the water and one wants to cross the ocean by catching hold of the dog's tail, certainly he is foolish. Similarly, if in distress, one seeks the shelter of a demigod, he is foolish. He is foolish, for his efforts will be fruitless. In all circumstances, one should seek the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then there will be no danger under any circumstances. Let's see. Yeah, so obviously, in the case of Hiranyakashipu, it's obvious that demigods can't help because they're all subjected to his rule. Speaking addressing an issue that may seem contradictory. Before all this happened, before you guys got this far in the Bhagavatam way back, Hiranyakashipu was trying to pacify his family members before he started all his austerities. As a politician, he was trying to pacify his family members about the death of his brother, Hiranyaksha. And he spoke in knowledge. It sounds like a pure devotee speaking about how we're not our bodies, and how there's karma and reincarnation and things like this. And he did it as if he were a gifted lecturer in devotional service today. But a politician we all know that a politician can adopt a mood, almost like going into an ecstatic state, taking that mood and making it his own feeling for the purpose of achieving a goal with a certain demographic of people. And then later on, and he can do that while still hating the person that he is eulogizing. This is the skill of a politician. Kamsa did the same thing. So that seems contradictory. Why was Kamsa also speaking to Vasudeva after killing Devaki's children? Why was he speaking such learned words? Politicians have to be, in their diplomacy, they have to be skilled at speaking in the mood of the audience. And so, even though he's still a hater of Krishna, Hiranyakashipu, this is what he did when he referred to Yamaraj appearing like a small boy on a battlefield, trying to teach these queens about the death of their king, and said how wonderful it is that people, they just, you probably all remember that story, but this is why it seems, see, in other words, nowadays, when a politician speaks, he speaks of, if he's speaking to people our age, my age, he's speaking to people who were hippies or impersonalists, and they speak in terms of manifesting, this is your special time, this is the opportune time, the angels are with you, you're getting the support of the ascended masters, that sort of thing. They don't normally talk this way, but they may talk this way if they're speaking to a certain group. You won't hear anything about Krishna, of course, because that's the common spiritual knowledge in the West. And so in the same way, that's what both Hiranyakashipu and Kamsa were doing. There's let's see here. Anybody can interrupt with questions anytime they would like to. Can you tell Chandan that you're busy now? Chandan's on. I heard last night that much of the Mahabharata turns out to be a conglomeration of stories that doesn't have much left of it in the original Mahabharata. And this is I'm old and I forget how this pertains, but in any event, the Srimad Bhagvatam contradicts the stories that remain in Mahabharata because it's been protected by a parampara. For instance, apparently there's no evidence in any of the Shastras that when Queen Kunti, when she was young, she tried this mantra that Durvasa Muni gave her, and it brought the sun god into her room, her quarters, and he impregnated her with Karna through the air. Apparently, even Prabhupada was thinking this at the time because this was common. I read that in a Mahabharata also a long time ago. But it's not, since it's contradicted in the Shastras that are protected by the parampara and unchanged, like the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Mahabharata has become a conglomeration of stories that were exaggerated, re-edited, and so much of it is not really a part of the original Mahabharata. There's also the story of Queen Draupadi being gambled away by her husband, and this makes Vedic culture look bad, but it's a story. It didn't happen. It was wonderful and inspiring to think that finally she was trying to hold on to her robes as they were trying to remove them. Dushasan, one of the sons of Dhritarashtra. And she just let go with her arms in the air, hoping that Krishna would save her from it, and Krishna did, according to the story. But that's not in any of the other scriptures that have come down to us by way of, including the other Puranas, and any mentions of it in the Shruti. It's just a story that seemed inspiring at the time that somebody added. So there's a lot in that Mahabharata that has become sort of like the Bible. It's been edited. Things have been added and subtracted, and it's a shastra that's long since become unprotected by the purity of sage, of a disciplic line handing it down over time. And this is something that comes from people like, for instance, the devotees who are they're with the Bhaktivedanta Institute of Higher Studies, and they have committed themselves to. I'm actually speaking about contradictions. This is my obsession. Devotees have trouble when they're feeling trouble. Contradictions can make it worse for them if there's something that they can't understand in Prabhupada's books. And my objective is to show that actually everything Prabhupada wrote was true, literally. And there's a way that can be proven. It depends on the level of consciousness one is on when one looks at the sun. For us, we see a big ball of fire in the sky at 93 million miles away. And yet, for demigods, they see a god on a chariot. And it's actually the same place. It's actually the same thing seen on two different levels of consciousness. Because ultimately, everything is a state of consciousness. For instance, Krishna and his associates in Goloka, their bodies are made of states of consciousness. Sat, the experience of time, eternal time in their case. Chit, knowledge, and Ananda, bliss. So how is that a substance that you can touch, see, and hear? Apparently it is. It's because their bodies are made of states of consciousness, actually. There is no substance of material nature as we think of it. But, and in the material world, our bodies are also made of states of consciousness, but happen to be an illusion. Goodness, passion, and ignorance, those are all states of consciousness. Yet we can see, hear, and touch each other. In fact, time itself is the most primary element in what we're seeing as a physical thing. I can't give the verse for that now, but it is time that we experience. It's temporary. And how can something that we can see be made of something that we can't see? This is because this paradox is because we're in Maya. We're sleeping. We're sharing a dream of Maya. Now, devotees who go to Western secular institutions, colleges, they're kind of reconditioned to forget this. And they start thinking in terms of what they can see, and the scientists there, they start thinking in terms of what they can see, hear, and touch, according to modern Western secular science. And the assumption there, the underlying assumption they have, is that everything that I can see, hear, and feel, including with the help of technology, is the way it is for all time and for all beings. In other words, going back in time, Satya Yuga and let's say Dwapara Yuga, they must have been a bunch of primitive people that loved allegory and speaking of impossible things. That's the assumption that you must take up if you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a modern technology. Yes. Go ahead. Somebody had a question? Okay. These scientists commit to hundreds of thousands of dollars and thousands of hours rethinking everything that they may have learned from Prabhupada. Some of them were around when Prabhupada was manifest. And they lose sight of well, actually, they're very anxious about two words, karma and Maya. They forget that there's a chapter in what I'm writing called Scheduled Changes of Reality, exemplified by the change in what people experience in the world they live in by between Dwapara Yuga and Kali Yuga. In the Kali Yuga, we're born with very limited sense perception. What Prabhupada says that when astronauts move through space, they're actually like a bull with a rope through the ring in its nose tied to a post, and it just goes round and around without perceiving that. Certain directions have closed to our sight. We don't see those directions we can go in if we have higher vision. And so for a devotee who's committed all that, I just lost my place on this verse, but I just accidentally touched my phone. So anyway, for a devotee who's committed to finding that verse, it's 421. Oh, let's see here. Bhagvatam. Oh, no, we don't want that one. Okay, we're going up.
We are doing 24.
Are there any questions while I'm interrupted here?
No, Prabhuji.
Okay, so the scientists, or those who became scientists since learning from Prabhupada, okay, chapter 4, find verse 21. They forget that karma, these are two words that make them nervous. Karma and Maya. Karma, because the people that were born in Dwapara Yuga and the people that are born in the heavenly planets, that's the one, thank you. Down to the bottom of it. Thank you. They had a different karma, so they're gonna experience a different reality. What nobody seems to understand and talk about, and this comes from Pramana. I think of it as Bhakti Anuman, the yoga of devotion. It's obvious if one thinks about it. You see, my underlying assumption is not what they've adopted. They've adopted that whatever I see, feel, and touch, including with technology, is the way it is for all beings at all time. I rely on my senses, and anything about a sun being a god on a chariot is ridiculous. It's got to be symbolic or allegoric, you see. It doesn't make material sense to them that it could be two different things at the same time based on a level of consciousness. It doesn't make sense to them anymore. Okay, so karma is different in the age of Indorpa Yuga, and for demigods, they can see things differently. Prabhupada and Radharani also saw both levels, Kali Yuga and Dwapar Yuga in demigod likes when they were looking at the moon and saying things. When Radharani was looking at the moon and saying things about it. But because what people don't realize is that the Bhagavatam is describing a reciprocal relationship between the collective mentality of the people that are born at in a certain age and the physical laws of nature. They cause and affect each other. Well, actually, the collective consciousness of the people that are born in the Dwapara Yuga are experiencing a different reality of so-called laws of nature. So the oceans wash up jewels and onto the shore instead of dead seashells and seaweed. The hills are producing jewels, popping up right out of the ground in minerals, and nobody needs to. But in the Dwapara, in the material, in our age, in Kali Yuga, the ocean is washing up the red tide, various forms of algae that can make us ill. It's washing up dead seaweed, seaweed and dead whale carcasses. If we have to do strip mining if we want mining to come, minerals out of the earth, because we have a different mentality and we were born in the age of Kali. So this is the law of nature that we get, and the devotees and all secular trained scientists are assuming that's the way it is for everyone at all times. I and maybe others, but they don't think it's far enough that I do, because I'm weird. It's like I'm not trying to raise a family. I'm not a real useful devotee, but I'm an investigator. That was my income. It came from private investigations and seeing subtle things and connections between people. So here I am spotting these connections, where, for instance, with the laws of nature and the collective mentality of the people born in a different age, they're going to experience a different reality, which means that what we think of as physical reality reciprocates the collective mentality of the people born in that age, like Dwapara Yuga, or if you're born on the heavenly planets. And now Maya, now that's karma. Now Maya is, I don't know if any of you know who Satiputta Prabhu was, a Prabhupada disciple. He's known, Prabhupada referred to him as a great Mahatma, who came to our movement to help us along in our science. And he was resisted when people tried to get him into the BHIS, the Bhaktivedanta Institute of Higher Studies, but somebody fought his way in there for him. It's a really, really helpful devotee, and he was the most gifted scientist I ever knew. I was with the Bhaktivedanta Institute, the original one, that part of it that was in San Francisco, and I saw a lot of the history that took place there. And it's understandable to me why it splintered up so much into these different BIs. But anyway, Satiputta became my adjunct professor. And he was the most gifted scientist I know, but even he didn't ever refer to either karma or Maya, not once. Because he's committed himself to his higher secular education. He, however, agrees that there is consciousness fundamental in itself, not explainable in terms of matter. So they become like dualists, and this is what the modern physicists are doing now. They like and they're thumbing their noses at the old material, the old guard materialists who still want to try to maintain that everything is ultimately matter, because there's funding opportunity for research in engineering material systems that can be controlled by consciousness, both for medical purposes and weaponization in military purposes. And so, but they're sort of like dualists. They still think that matter is a real thing. One of those guys at the BIHS actually added to Kapila Dev's description of the elements of nature, from material nature, from the false ego, Mahavishnu seeing Maya across Durga Devi across the Viraj River or the causal ocean and impregnates her. She and then Sadashiva, his Mahavishnu's major limb, her husband, who is Shambhu, Sadashiva, he enters into the material elements itself. They're not material, they're Brahman. It's actually qualitative Brahman. It's Brahman with qualities, variety. This is what we're seeing in the material world. And then she twists it up into temporary things. Temporary means, Krishna uses the word temporary with non-existent synonymously. And there's verses for that I can produce. I didn't line that up. I didn't know I was going to be going in this direction, but whenever Krishna says something is temporary, he means it doesn't exist. It's asat. It's not sat. And so when devotees, like Prabhupada says, he says to the impersonalists, this world is not false, it's real, but it's Brahman that we can't see. The quantum physicists can't see that Brahman. So they design a wave function, a quantum mechanical calculation to try to see it. And only after they calculate can they see it in its own, because of choices they made that they can see it, conscious choices. It's not independent of their consciousness. But when Prabhupada says, when we offer something to Krishna, we're not doing it. We're just offering Brahman back to Krishna. Like the landlord may he owns my home, but I offer him a nice place to sit. I offer him the virtues of my home. And so in the same way, Krishna gives us everything, but we're not offering a plate of something that's been paid for by a lot of money to impress devotees in a mood of Maya. We're offering Brahman to Krishna, and it appears to have qualities and variegated. That's because it is Sadashiva himself taking on, showing how Brahman has qualities in Goloka. Trees and people and vehicles are there too, but Maya makes them temporary, and that's the only part of it that we can see. So so this is what makes those guys a little nervous is Maya. What they have to realize is they just dovetailed all their hours and all their dollars and hours getting educated in something that may not be real. I've never heard Sariputta, in times I've talked to him, I've never heard him use the term Maya. And he can't answer the question, this following question. If Krishna is pure consciousness, if he's pure Satchidananda Vigraha, pure Satchidananda, no tinge of material qualities, then where does material come from? Where does matter come from? How can something come from a situation that it didn't previously exist? Well, the answer is, there is no matter. It's an illusion. It's something but we can't see that. We can only see the illusion until we wake up. And that's the aspect of Maya that makes them nervous. Super soul, an impersonalist nowadays would say, a Western impersonalist would say, listen to the whispers of your soul. Your soul may be telling you something that you're nervous about when you've got a train of thought going, and you think, no, that can't be right. And then you continue a train of thought. Actually, that's super soul whispering to us. And Well, I'm speaking in my experience, but I think that is a common meditational kind of thing where your higher self, so to speak, is trying to get you to see and trust the universe, that kind of talk. And that your current line of thinking is too materially constrained or something. But it's actually supersoul nudging you. So it still happens to me. I still refuse to, it's like I've got a train of thought going, but it pertains to my daily life here in Mayapur. And suddenly a new thought will bump into my train of thought. And it's harder for me to ignore now because I'm aware of it. But it makes me nervous, and I'm thinking, wow, no, that can't be. And then I continue my train of thought, and then I get some lessons. I learn lessons from not listening. So in the same way, this is happening to all those guys. They're all actually devotees, whether they think of themselves that way or not. The scientists at the BIHS. Oh yeah, but one of them actually, excuse me, I'm taking a head of water here. One of them, I saw neck beads on him in his profile. And I think, but he uses his Karmi name. He says in their profiles, they describe themselves, what they do, and he's a physicist. And he oh yeah, he was speaking about the third canto description of the elements of nature, starting with Ahankara, Lord Shiva, the false ego, and that somehow or other transforms in some way and manifests into the intelligence, the Mahatattva. And the Mahatattva says there contains all material elements, and then there's some further transformation, and that becomes somehow or other the mind comes from that, then sound, or how these elements are coming down to earth, fire, water, air, and ether, and now this guy in a voiceover, he's showing a bullet point presentation of these elements, and then off on the side he writes matter and aspects of consciousness, and he voices over saying, and I've also added matter and aspects of consciousness. In forensic statement content analysis and investigative protocol, the states of I've added matter and aspects of consciousness. The aspects of consciousness is a prop. It's a deception. What's the physicist know about states of consciousness? He wanted to distract or speak really fast and say, oh, I've added this over here, and then move on without anybody paying attention. Why did he add matter? Because he didn't see matter referred to, even though Kapila Dev himself said all the elements of matter are in this progression of creation, all the way down to earth. So he added it. And he's obviously hasn't been a devotee for long, because it's not a good idea to add the words of God. You know what I mean? If Kapila Dev forgot, did he think Kapila Dev forgot to add matter? No. Matter is a state of consciousness. And it's an illusory state of consciousness. And Krishna verifies this in several verses that I'm going to be using in whatever I wind up writing here about this, Maya and karma, and how it's affected certain senior devotees. They're very worshipful devotees compared to me. I'm just an ant compared to them. The guys that run the BIHS. I'm just a minuscule little ant. So I have to approach this very carefully. But quantum physics, this in the year 2022, around halfway through, we stopped hearing the BIHS posting their progress online and the different developments, because they were moving away from Prabhupada's what he wanted, which was the Bhagvatam, the Puranic world that he always talked about, and moving into the Jyotir Shastra, the little dirt ball Earth that is 8,000 miles in diameter, 93,000 miles away from 93 million miles away from the sun, etc. They can't see that that the Puranic universe of the Bhumandala plate, the big vast Earth, the way Prabhupada talked about it, and the little dirt ball Earth which is the only one we can see now, are actually the same place on different levels of consciousness. This doesn't make material sense to them. That's because their underlying assumption is material. My underlying assumption is that everything Prabhupada said is true if it's tattva, not lila, not details of what happened here and there, but tattva, truth. And so I'm finding that it's very easy to put it together, that it's obvious that material nature reciprocates the souls, reciprocates the life, the mentality of the people that are born together in that dream state, in whether Devopu or in the heavenly planets, where anything is possible, because for instance, in Uddhava Gita 11:7:7, Krishna says, among other things, that this world is imaginary. It's imaginary. So, so what's not possible in an imaginary world? Anything's possible in an imaginary world. What Prabhupada is saying is real about the Bhagavatam is not that it's not imaginary. It's that it's our collective dream has a certain history to it. He's talking about our dream that we remember, Lord Brahma actually did certain things. Uttanapad and Maharaj, his brother, the father of, I forget his name, he actually carved out the oceans between the planets. And he was able to do that because he was self-realized. And he knew that it's a dream, it's an imaginary world, and he can affect my imaginary world that I'm holding in me the same way because we're sharing the same dream. But this is what makes the scientists, this is why this is what I'm hoping to publish in my next effort. For instance, starting with that a beloved riddle for my beloved ISKCON family. It's the riddle that if Krishna is the cause of everything, how can matter come from him if he hasn't got matter within him? What sense does it make to say that something comes from a situation where it didn't previously exist in any sense? And then the answer to that, I put it in a riddle because people will jump to conclusions if they hear the answer but it's hearing the answer, reading through what I'm seeing, what I'm writing, that gives us the problem-solving potency of that answer. And the problems we have with both the TOBP, the contradictions they're continuously running into, and the misbehavior of younger generation devotees who are going off base out into the village and dancing with ladies of the night when they can't control their senses, and they say, well, it's all how can I believe what I'm reading anyway? In this way, I found obvious connection between the mentality towards Prabhupada's books of both the TOBP scientists and the younger generation devotees who weren't with Prabhupada and didn't know that they didn't experience the personal power of Prabhupada in being convincing that it's real and in what sense it's real. We still didn't know that back then. In what sense is it real? But we just knew that it was real by his presence. And incidentally, Prabhupada is not just in his Vani. This is what's going around Mayapur now. Yes, you can associate with Prabhupada in his Vani, but he's not just in his Vani. He's also a previous acharya that we can call on. Why not call on Prabhupada? He's the ISKCON. He is everywhere that Supersoul is with an ISKCON devotee. And he has plenty of time to reciprocate on your altar or out in the village, wherever you are, in the city, with signals, just like Super Soul gives us. Little signals. He reciprocates. He's not just in his body. He is in his body, but he's also isn't he the one who wrote in his books that we should call on the previous acharyas like Bhaktivinoda Thakur and the associates of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. We can even call on them, adopt their mood, and we'll get help from them if we want to learn how they serve Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. Well, Goloka Vrindavan's right here. Anywhere that there's consciousness of it. And for anyone who sees themselves as a devotee, as an ISKCON devotee, Prabhupada is there right beside Super Soul. Anywhere Super Soul is with an ISKCON devotee, Prabhupada is there also, and he has plenty of time now to reciprocate with you. Either because time is different on his level, and he can reciprocate with everybody one at a time, or Krishna can manifest him simultaneously as much as Krishna wants, just like he can himself, to talk with all devotees, and Prabhupada experiences the nudging he wants to give to all those devotees, to get them to understand that he is present and waiting for them to call on him. Why not call on the Sampradaya Acharya? So, and you can have experiences. Twice now, Prabhupada had said that he walked into a temple, and he walked near the pujari, and he said, "Oh, and what is the mood of the pujari today?" You probably have all heard this. And the pujari was bewildered; he didn't know what to say. And Prabhupada says, "You should know this. Eventually, the pujari will give you a feeling of the mood. He may even talk to you someday." But why didn't Prabhupada tell us? And this happened in LA too, also. And that was in Dallas. But why didn't Prabhupada tell us all to become pujaris in that case? Is it that Sankirtan devotees are never going to have that experience? Or servants of the Sankirtan devotees like I was? Is it on Radha Damodar? Is it no. We can all have the personal experience of Prabhupada, and it becomes more possible for you the older you get, the more you're coming close to your final sadhana, which is what I thought I was going to be doing when I came here. And then Krishna hit me with this huge contradiction that, and I always thought of myself as the contradiction king. I grew up bringing up things that were contrary to what my parents were doing. And then tragedies happened, and I said, man, I'm not having any more to do with this family business, even though I did get married and get tried twice. But because I missed the idea of it. And then here's this giant contradiction. I thought I saw it when, for instance, Christians have the contradiction. If God is all powerful, then why doesn't he squash the devil? Where does the devil come from? The devil, God must be evil because he allows the devil. No, God isn't evil. Well, then where does the devil come from? So they have to say, well, the devil comes from God. Well, then God, in other words, God is either evil or condones evil, or God is he's not evil, but he doesn't he didn't produce the devil. The devil is some other God. And so, the devote ISKCON, well, at least Prabhupada's books, I saw right away in Krishna book, that my first book, that's easily solved. The evil in this world and the Maya comes from us. It's our own choices. He gives us independent choices. It's our problem. It's not Krishna's problem. So that's all that. But I didn't think about this other contradiction until I got here, and then Super Soul Krishna slaps me in the face with this other contradiction. Where does matter come from? How can it come from Krishna? He's not material. And the point is, it doesn't come from Krishna. There is no matter. It's Brahman. But it's Brahman that disguises itself as we're sleeping. And what's real is the history of this dream. So Priyavrata Maharaj, that's Uttanapad's brother, he carved out some oceans. He could do it. He was self-realized. Because what's impossible about a dream? What's impossible to do in an imaginary world? But it happened in our collective dream. And that's what Prabhupada says, that his history is real. Everything he says about the history, that the oceans were created by Priyavrata, that that Lord Shiva does have a secret life. He does pick out certain devotees at times, certain persons at times, when they're following him around at night. He gives, after they've come out of hell, he gives them, yeah, you go to this body, you become a rabbit. Yeah, you go to that germ, you're over there. Yeah, you're a germ now, okay. And they're following through the night sky. And then he looks at this and says, oh, wait a minute. And he grabs that guy and puts him in his pocket and says, I got another place for you. And he takes that guy to a devotee. Because he's Ahankara, the father of this world, the false ego, and he knows he's in our hearts too, but he's also the greatest of all devotees. And he brings devotees like Shiva Jiva here and me to devote to devotional service. You don't have to be famous and a big timer for him to do that. He brings a lot of devotees in his secret life to Vrindavan, where he stays in so many different ways, and forms lingams, and the mountain that Nandagram, Nanda Maharaj's palace is built on. He is that mountain. He has several lingams, and Sanatan Goswami, whom Lord Chaitanya says is 1,000 Brihaspitis after he's empowered. He's always situated somewhere near a Shiva Lingam when he was traveling around Vrindavan. There's an interesting story about how Lord Shiva, at one of those, I think it was somewhere near Govardhan. It was Lake Manasa. It's right in the middle of Govardhan Hill. It's a big lake, and Shiva's Sanatan Goswami is being bothered by mosquitoes. It's just getting to be too much for him, so he's packing up. Starts to walk out, and suddenly an old man comes to him, an old Brahmin. He says, Babaji, where are you going? Where are you going? And Sanatan Goswami says, oh, it's too disturbing. These mosquitoes are crazy. I can't deal with it any longer. And the old Brahmin Babaji said, the old Brahmin says, no, Babaji, I know what to do. I know what to do. You just stay here. And then Sanatan Goswami thought there was kind of something unusual about him. He said, okay, no, I'll stick it out. Okay, on your promise. And the old Brahmin disappears, walks back up the hill, and then all of a sudden it's Shiva himself. And he calls out the demigod in charge of mosquitoes. It says, get your mosquitoes out of there right now. And so the god of mosquitoes makes all the mosquitoes disappear from that place. And apparently there are no mosquitoes to this day in that place where Sanatan Goswami was. Now, you don't have to be famous to be brought by Lord Shiva to devotional service, but this Vrindavan is his secret life. His poetry about Radharani should be heard. It's just some of the sweetest poetry in the world. But in the material world, Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu, he's the greatest of all devotees. Although he says that Prahlad Maharaj is the greatest of all devotees. And now I'm going to open it up for questions, because I've said a lot and I'm old and my mind wanders. And I'm wondering if anybody might have any questions, especially about contradictions, since they can be troubling to devotees who are feeling troubled. Contradictions in Prabhupada's books or anything like that. Go ahead, if anybody wants to pop in. Well, in the meantime, I'll address one. In the as far as Narada is concerned, Narada Muni, he's a Nitya Siddha. He's described as a Nitya Siddha. Yet it's also said that in a previous life in the material world, he was a little boy that served Vaishnavas, great Vaishnavas. And so how can he be Nitya Siddha, eternally liberated, when he was born as a little boy that served Vaishnavas and wandered off when his mother died when he was 5 years old into the forest, and Super Soul came to him and said, yes, this is the only time you're going to see me in this life, but you're seeing me. And then in the next life, he's Narada Muni, eternally liberated, never having fallen down. It's one reason is because he's eternal. He's never having fallen down, because there's no, except for the Bhagvatam and other literal histories, there's no record of it happening. The Akashic record, so to speak, the ether has erased his past. The ether is like what Western spiritualists call the Akashic record. It is the word Akasha, it's Sanskrit. But there's no record of it in the Akashic record. There's no record of it in the ether anymore. Yamaraj can't see, has no access to that record. It's been erased. His record has been closed. Also, time, also one can think of it this way. Nobody ever said that Narada Muni wasn't a Nitya Siddha when he came into this world in that life. And it was for the purpose of Leela and adjusting to the material world, because he was going to be spending time here for our benefit, that he didn't do that deliberately, that he didn't descend directly from the spiritual world. Nobody ever said that didn't happen. Now, the reason why this is important is because on the let's see, in the ISKCON Desire Tree website, under biographies, or who's who, well, one of those two sections of it, I think it's the who's who section of the ISKCON Desire Tree. The first few paragraphs, Narottam Das Thakur says, anybody who understands, and this is similar to Krishna's verse 4:9, where if anyone who understands that his pastimes, his birth and appearance, disappearance in the material world are transcendental, and just, describing what transcendental is, immaterial, non-material, but fully spiritual, he comes back to Godhead. Now that could just mean Narayan Loka or something like that. Krishna handed out liberation like somebody handing out Kleenex at a wedding or something. He handed out liberation, that was no problem. But he didn't hand out prema, love of God. Lord Chaitanya did that. Lord Chaitanya comes and let's see, so Lord Chaitanya, what was I going to say? The verse in the top of, in the first few paragraphs, Narottam Das Thakur says that anyone who understands that the associates, specifically, but other associates as well, but also particularly the Panchatattva, anyone who understands that they are eternally liberated souls, never having fallen down, goes back to Godhead, and that goes back to Godhead means eventually gets Krishna prema. Then in the purport to that, that's quoted on that page, Prabhupada says, and there's no waiting through material bodies and getting training. As being born as a devotee to get initiated, like me, and you, and others, Prabhupada says, when you know that, you go back to Godhead immediately with Krishna prema. So those who have to stay in the material world, they need to get initiated. They can't, because first of all, Krishna says in the Adi Purana, one who says he's my devotee is not my devotee, but one who serves my devotee is my real devotee. And the point is that if you didn't luck out, it was probably because the soul was ready to go back to Godhead at that time that he goes back to Godhead by simply understanding that. But if somebody dies knowing that. But if you're living in a body, you have to have a Diksha guru to take away your karma, and that makes to integrate your karma, because he can transcend it. He takes it from you so that you have less obstacles in your devotional service. And if you fall down, then that gives him a headache, or it makes him a little ill or something. But he can handle it if he's elevated, nicely elevated devotee. My godbrothers, during the first 3 years after Prabhupada became invisible to us, they had a hell of a time because they were initiating a lot of devotees like crazy. And it was very chaotic. But everyone who comes into contact with Krishna is a devotee, even when there's people who are actually thinking of Mayapur as a place of economic gain only. Indigenous people, there are a few here, indigenous people. They have a position of power, but even the gundas, they are also special gundas. They are not ordinary gundas. Even a germ in Mayapur is a Mayapur microbe, not an ordinary microbe. They move up right away. They may catch hell for what they've done, but they move up right away. They don't go to Yamaraj's court anymore. They're in Krishna's court. So this is about Narada Muni. You see, there's many different ways in which that can be seen, where it's not actually a contradiction anyway. I think I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up and wait for any questions, because if anybody, I'll just stand by here for a few minutes and wait for questions. I know what I said was a lot, and but there's verses. I didn't have them selected out here. I can't coordinate all the electronics, but there's verses in the Uddhava Gita, in the 11th canto, and in the Bhagavad Gita. Oh wait, well here's one. I think it's Bhagavad Gita 2:14. O son of Krishna is talking to Arjuna. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress are like the appearance and disappearance of the winter and summer seasons, and they arise due to sense perception or parta. One needs to tolerate them without being disturbed. Now he's talking about two different things. One is happiness and distress, and one is winter and summer. But he said they arise from sense perception. Summer and winter also arise from sense perception, just like happiness and distress. We're dreaming this summer and winter experience together in a collective dream. There's also a fantastic example of a collective dream I would describe regarding Lord Nityananda's wife, Janava Mata. She converted a bunch of dacoits to become great devotees. And it was a very vivid, I'll just say it. I mean, like, I'm just wandering around now, but I'll just describe this thing briefly. Mother Janava, after Lord Nityananda disappeared, she was traveling to Vrindavan to bring some deity, to bring some Radharani deities for the 5 deities, at least five of the deities that were when they were discovered, they didn't have Radha with them. They were just worshipped as Krishna. And other opulent gifts for the deities. And some dacoits spotted this, and so when Mother Janava's camped down for the night on her way to Vrindavan, these dacoits camped down nearby quietly, and said, okay, so sometime in the middle of the night, we're going to go and kill everybody and take everything. And so in the middle of the night, they all had, and their goddess was Chandi, I think it was Chandi, but it's a form of Mother Durga. And in the middle of the night, they all had the same dream at the same time. And Mother Durga, Chandi, a very vicious looking form, was waving her sword with her tongue moving to and fro in a scary manner in their face and saying, I worship Mother Janava. She is my goddess. And if you don't surrender to her immediately, I'm going to chop your heads off. And they all had the same dream. And so they all suddenly disturbed in their sleep. And this is around sunrise. She kept them asleep. They all had the same dream. So it's a collective dream that they all had at the same time. Yeah, but anyway, they all went and immediately surrendered to Mother Janava, and that was it. I mean, like they became great devotees. Now, is there anybody? I just had to tell that example of a collective dream experience the same way. Is anybody any other questions, or shall we close it up for the evening? Shamarasika, Mata? Okay, no questions. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and close her up now. It's getting pretty late. I may have miscalculated the how to use Satish. What are they doing? They're signing on.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for a very good class. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Okay, I bid you all good night, and thank you so much for this opportunity to associate with you. I'm sorry for my crazy talk tonight, but my mind is all up in the clouds as opposed to in the technology. I pray for Prabhupada's blessings on all of you.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. This is Shamarasika Devidasi. Dandavat Pranam. Such a
And my
beautiful,
bad.
wonderful class, Prabhuji. And I don't have any question, but the class went very well. And thank you so much for giving your valuable time with the low internet connectivity. So thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. If anybody has any question, please go ahead. Otherwise, Prabhuji will need to go because of night there.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all grace to Sri Prabhupada.
Parthadas. Yes.
It was
Sorry,
a
Bill.
nice class, very enlightening. So I have two questions. One is that Bhaktivedanta Institute. So it is to publish on. Is the purpose is to publish in the scientific journals the Vedic perspective. Is it true or?
Well, they are trying to do their own research. See, Sariputta Das, the original genius in figuring out so much about the eventual model of the TOV, the temple temple of the Vedic planetarium. He relied on the research that already existed that proved that there was more to life than atoms and the laws of motion, that there was spiritual phenomena going on, and there was paranormal phenomena going on. He cited the deathbed vision studies of Carlos Osis. He cited near-death experience studies. He cited, and these are all independently documented. He cited paranormal things that Prabhupada had also verified, and things that were later verified by Snowden. You know that Snowden, that whistleblower about ETs and stuff, about them coming in and out of the poles, but Sariputta arranged data that nobody would touch. Scientists did not want to even think about Sariputta. Because his science was sound. But the BIHS, they wanted to do their own research, and it's all, their underlying assumption is based on modern secular assumption that what I see now is what anybody would see as a human being for all time and all places, whether using technology or not. That's their underlying assumption without explicating it. They don't state that, but that's just what they automatically think after committing thousands of hours and thousands of dollars to this secular Western education. But this is why karma and maya, these concepts, not in the normal parlance and usage of regular devotees, but those two terms have a much deeper meaning for them that can make them nervous. Like I say, I never heard Sariputta refer to either one of those when he would give class. You know, I never heard him refer to either one of those terms. But so these guys are trying, and these guys are doing their own research, and it's just based on their very wrong underlying assumption. Einstein is famous for having said, there's no such thing as a scientific proof without an underlying assumption. I think he said that because his theory of relativity was running into some resistance. Everybody had a Newtonian idea of physics. There's physical material things, and then there's our awareness of it. But he put the problem with that, with the theory of relativity, is that it puts the observer in the center. But he didn't use that term, and he just used the term frame of reference. If I'm standing in a train station and you're on a train that's moving at the speed of light, I'm only, and then let's say you're the conductor on a train that's moving at the speed of light. And then you switch on the headlights. You're going to see that light that you turned on moving out ahead of you at the speed of light, which is supposed to be the speed limit of the universe. Nothing goes faster than the speed of light. But if you're standing on the platform outside the train, all you see is one speed of light phenomena, whereas the guy on the train who was moving at the speed of light already, he sees his flashlight or his torch moving out ahead of him at the speed of light. So that already messes up the idea, you know, of material reality being totally objective from consciousness. And then quantum physics comes along and even makes it more that way. So, but when somebody commits to a modern secular education, unfortunately, that's their underlying assumption. And mine is, I'd already have some science, but mine is, I'm going to assume that what Prabhupada says is true, at least in terms of tattva, truth, concepts, siddhanta, maybe not in terms of lila and details. This is what Krishna led me to because I spot small things being an investigator. This little word karma, this little word maya, how come they never use it in forensic statement content analysis, an investigative protocol that I was certified in? Let's say somebody murders their children so that she can marry another husband. She speaks of the children, I loved my children, past tense. Or she'll say, and she won't mention them by name. Or somebody murders his wife, he won't mention her by name. No, he won't say my wife, he'll mention her by name as though she's some other person. So where's the I? And where's the my wife, the I? There's a lacuna, a lacking of information there. And you put that together with other elements in the statement, and whether it's written or spoken, you can come up with deception. And or indications of deception. And so in the same way, this is what I find with the terms maya and karma, with guys that commit themselves to modern Western education. There's a lacuna, info lacuna. It lacks a presence in their statements, in the classes they give and stuff. I don't know if that was directly addressed it, but they're trying to do their own research based on the underlying assumption what I see now is what any human being would see at any time in history, and the sun or the moon coming from the ocean of milk is that's impossible. That's just allegory. This is how they think of it. When in fact, in a trans-dimensional way, the sun did come from the moon did come from the ocean of milk. It's trans-dimensional. It's at a time that's other than our time. It's in fact a lila that occurred because the moon is also ultimately a person. Just like Krishna getting his chakra from Shiva. It's a gift to him in a certain appearance, incarnation, when we know that the chakra eternally belongs to Krishna. But for Leela purposes, in one incarnation, it was a gift from Shiva. So now, is there any other questions or?
They are producing PhDs, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they are PhDs, some of them, and they're trying to do research based on this assumption that
No. Are they not producing PhD? Is the Bhaktivedanta Institute not producing PhD, peer-reviewed publication?
Oh no, the BIHS is simply a gathering of PhDs, some have PhDs, to do a lot of things about to try to understand the Vedas in modern times, which means secular understanding, to see why the people of Vedic times described the world the way they did, the way Prabhupada described it. And one or two of their members are also actually responsible for designing the model of the temple of the Vedic planetarium, the cosmology and cosmography that's going to be appearing in that model, in that big temple.
Yes, but I believe Sadaputta Das correlated the Vedic descriptions of the Vedic cosmology with the modern astronomical findings, and they were telling. So why shouldn't it be acceptable to the so-called scientific community?
Oh well, they are doing that. They're accepting now. They're accepting Sariputta Das's model. A lot of them, though not all of them, but they still can't understand, because even to Sariputta Das, it didn't make sense materially that those planets could also be islands that surround the central island of Jambudvip, which we're calling Earth now, and which we've converted by our sense perception now into a little dirt ball 8,000 miles in diameter. There's different levels of consciousness, and there is no matter. And it's transdimensional. And but the scientist Sariputta Das, he was Hridayananda Maharaj called him a genius. Hridayananda Maharaj is also one of the guys that run the BIHS. Hridayananda is also gifted. In fact, he's a very great servant of Prabhupada because he opened up all of South America to temple worship, ISKCON temple worship, when he went and established temples all throughout South America at a time when it was dangerous to go there for white people. This was before globalization. But because he later on committed to the secular education, he's now committed to the idea that, well, this must be symbolic and that must be allegorical, and it doesn't make sense materially, that this could be real and also that at the same time. But when I say it doesn't make the phrase, doesn't make sense materially, I'm using the words of quantum physicists who are seeing what particles are doing. It doesn't make sense materially, they keep telling themselves, and they have no theory. You know, one newer-minded physicist said of the guys that are trying to hang on to the material view, the quantum physicists, the only underlying theory they have is the anything but God theory. But Krishna says at the Bhaktivedanta Institute, they're taking on this underlying assumption, this belief system, and that's all it is. You cannot prove that I'm wrong and that they are right. you cannot prove that the people of Dwapara Yuga didn't see and experience nature differently due to karma. And you cannot prove, they cannot prove that the world exists independently of our minds. They cannot prove it. They failed to do that. And they've given up. And so Heisenberg says, when he speaks of the uncertainty principle, Heisenberg says, science doesn't tell us about nature. It tells us about our relationship with nature. In other words, we're something other than nature. We being conscious people. Consciousness.
So basically, this current science, so-called science, is actually our perception,
Yeah.
our understanding. There may be which may be a speck of dust in the whole ocean of understanding, and that's we are calling it, and we are precluding all other understandings, which is not
Well
proven.
said. Well said.
Okay, and then how come how was the anything which is not experimental physics been accepted then, like theory of relativity?
Oh, well, I
You
was
said
thinking,
was
go
it
ahead, Parth.
accepted? Was it accepted?
Oh, yeah,
theory
yeah.
of relativity?
Yeah, relativity theory eventually was accepted, but Einstein had to say something like that in order to get people to listen, that Newtonian physics wasn't really working. It didn't, Einstein was able to make predictions based on his theory. Although you can't control astronomy the way you can control things in a lab, control for this variable and that variable. All you can do is look out into space and hope to see what you predict to see. You see, so that makes it a lot more subjective, what you're actually seeing in space. But nevertheless, he proved himself, he proved it, eventually they had to accept relativity theory, but he just never, he said, instead of saying the observer is now the cause of what material nature is with respect to the observer. He didn't use that term observer, which implies consciousness. He just used the term frame of reference. If your frame of reference is standing on the platform in a train station, then you will see, and a train is moving through the station at the speed of light. That's what you will see, one speed of light, which is the speed limit of the universe. But the conductor moving at the speed of light, he turns on the headlights, the torch out front. That moves out ahead of him at the speed of light. That's double the speed of light. So that's contradictory. The only way to resolve that contradiction, that the person on the platform sees one speed of light and the person on the train is seeing one speed of light that happens to be mathematically, it's two speeds of light happening together. That's a contradiction, except for the fact that there's an observer there. It's a frame of reference thing, and they had to accept relativity. So now those are the two main theories that are competing with each other, is relativity and quantum physics for dominance. And they're both full of contradictions. Anything else there, Prabhu? Parthadas?
Yes, I think yes. Yeah, the frame of reference.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Your session is so much valued, and
Okay.
your session in past session with the Bhaktivedanta Institute helped us a lot, because that is a very, we have really found people from that background.
Oh yeah. I was a part of that in the beginning. Okay, Prabhu, I need to wrap it up because I'm going to be late for something else I need to get done here. But I appreciate Rupina Padma and Shama Rasika, all you guys, for letting me have an opportunity to speak to you all. And I admire you all. And I know you're all more pleasing to Prabhupada than I am by far, by sticking to your guns and wanting to maintain this program and hearing and chanting in this material world that you're stuck in, over there in America. I think of it as America, Patala Loka America. I couldn't wait to get away from there. So I bid you all good night and pray that Prabhupada blesses you all.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So let's pay obeisances to all the Vaishnavas. Vancha kalpataruvesya kripa sindhavaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। नमाचार्य श्रीधरदास ठाकुर की जय। श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। हिज ग्रेस गोकुल प्रभु की जय। थैंक यू सो मच गोकुल प्रभु। हरे कृष्णा। धन्यवाद प्रणाम।
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.